Greetings and salutations in our distance. It is I, Wolfphototech, and here we are with another delightful video. This time it is going to cover the new spell cards from Paizo Publishing, released in the past month or so. This happens to be the Rage of Elements spell cards for Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remaster, but they're also compatible with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. There's over 240 spell reference cards in this book, in this set of cards. They include spells that are focused on air, earth, fire, metal, water, and wood. As you can see, it's a typical size box. It's not the largest box. It's roughly around the same physical size as the Arcane deck for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but maybe with slightly fewer cards. As before, I have the wrapper removed. Now, in the past, in previous sets, one of these panels would be the OGL, which no longer exists on the cards, as these are no longer OGL compatible. Untreated inside of the box. Basic information on the back side. If the camera zooms in, you can read it clearly. I leave this in 1080 mode. 1080p mode at 60 bit rate, or frames per second. There is no special artwork on the outside of the box, but this box is solidly constructed. More information on the bottom side that you can read. You can also see the MSRP right here, which happens to be $34.99, which is in that it's like, it would be nice if it was cheaper, but also at the same time, these cards are, there's a lot of these cards. It's a decent sized box. There's this extra little piece of cardboard in here. Incidentally, it's important to note that every single one of these spell cards boxes comes with one of these little rings of cardboard in here as a spacer. That is possibly so if you were to, say, play a wizard or any other class that happens to use a bunch of these cards, you could actually remove the cards you don't use from the box, or add the extra cards you do use from other card sets, but you don't use all of them, In other words, this box doubles as a... This happens to be the spells your character happens to have access to as a wizard, or... This happens to be the selection of spells you gain through such and such features, or so forth. First and foremost, there are 2 packets of spell cards. The first one has this Rage of Elements cover on it. And I'm going to pull them all out. By the way, each card back, as you can see, and front will be tied to a iconic and a class. However, these first few cards are a little bit different. Let me slip it away. First and foremost, the first card with the cover is the instruction card explaining the set of cards. And then the second card happens to be the OGL card, which is interesting. But still, there are references in the original Rage of Elements book to OGL items and features. But largely, Rage of Elements is one of those transition products. It contains OGL rules, and it contains the updated orc mechanics. So you go from there. Alrighty. Now this is gonna be a little fun. In the case of these spell cards, there will typically be, you'll see right here on the very top, the word arcane or divine or primal or focus or occult. That designates the tradition in which that spell falls into. in this set of cards. You'll happen to have the element and all the other key tags appear, as well as all the parameters in which the card spell operates, and then how the spell, the instructions of the spell, what kind of effects and everything. But this is also a case of a double-sided card, where when they run out of space on the front side, they continue it to the back side. You can see as such. This is something nice with Paizo's cards. They will oftentimes in the spell cards do double-sideds. In the case of Wizards of the Coast and Gale Force 9 decks, I've shown in the past on this channel, those do not go double-sided. And in fact, half the spell gets cut off the card. And it happens rarely. Not very many spells are super long. But in the case of Wish and a few other really long spells, for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, it absolutely does get cut off. Now, if you're looking at the arcane cards, if it does not go double-sided, you'll oftentimes have just the standard information on the one side, and then you'll have a picture of an iconic that's associated, the iconic of the iconics for that tradition. In this case, it's Ezra the Wizard. And you have all the arcane spell cards. As I said before, there'll be a case of double-sided cards in here, as well as single sides in the case of really short spells. And then you also have, I'll get there in a moment, all these iconic cards, all these arcane spell cards. And then you'll have the Divine, which is, you'll see a blue border. Arcane has red border. And this happens to be an example of a double-sided Divine card. But also, what you see is Kira for the cleric for the Divine. And then going over to the other cards. Yet again, you'll see Kira here. And then you have focus spells, which incidentally, they chose to use a new character for the focus spells. I am not familiar with this character, but focus spells basically require a point. And then when you take a short rest, you can recharge. So you happen to have all the focus spells in here. And then you happen to have the occult spells as well that all come in Rage of Elements, in which in case the iconic for occult happens to be Liam the halfling bard. And then they also include in this deck all the primal spells that are included in Rage of Elements as well. This is an example of a double-sided card. You see the word primal, you see green border, the level. It's a double-sided card. You got my brain fart. It starts with an I, or no, last letter is I. It's Laney, the druid. And then you have all the druid spells, which incidentally, considering that druids are inherently an elementally favored class, natural nature, stuff like that. Weirdly, that happens to be the thickest option range for spells in Rage of Elements. Like, use this example. This is the example of the druid spells compared to the occult spells in Rage of Elements. And then we have the focus spells. And then we have divine spells compared to druid. I'm actually holding my finger in there because that actually makes a divide. And then the only contender for the most spells in Rage of Elements is Arcane. Arcane is like, If you want the most variety of spells in D&D 5th edition, 4th, 3.5, Pathfinder 1st edition, Pathfinder 2nd edition, Arcane is the king. However, dang, that is pretty darn close. They're like neck and neck. So if you love your druids and you love your arcane spellcasters, you love primal spellcasters, you love your arcane spellcasters, Rage of Elements is a great bargain. If you really want to have tons of arcane spells, Rage of Elements, 4 stars. In the case of druid spells selection, another 4 stars straight up. You got tons of spells in that deck right there, or to go with your druid. In the case of occult or even divine, not as solid options. You know, you still have a good selection of spells in those other houses. It just happens to be that Rage of Elements favors the primal and arcane, which is not unusual. You know, arcane usually is the king of spells, and primal, I would think, you know, if you're primal, you'd be more ancient and more natural in the universe, and as such, you would have tons and tons of spells. I would put, say, occult. If you're a person who only ever uses an occult spellcaster, this spell deck doesn't really add a whole lot of options to your pile of cards for playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition. However, it is still, if at some point you ever do decide to go into Arcane or Primal, you have tons of spells. Same thing goes with Divine. You don't have very many spells in this in Rage of Elements for Divine. However, if you choose to go over to, say, Arcane or Primal, you instantly have tons and tons of spells. Considering the price is $35, this would be on averaged out between all the traditions, would somewhere between it would be like around a 3.5 star thing. It is really strong if you love to play arcane casters and druids or primal spellcasters. Then you're touching that 4-star territory. So, thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, and consider sharing this video around. I hope you have a delightful day, a nice night, a wonderful weekend, a magnificent month, and see you next time. Ciao.